Let's get started here. So stored procedures. So what I'm going to do, again, this is on the YouTube video, so I'm not going to go through it. But I did have one question, which was from Daniel. Actually, we've got a couple of questions from Daniel. But let's take a look at this one. It was about the delimiter in stored procedures. The When you put the delimiter up front, the double forward slash, why do you have to do that? And let me get an example up, and then I'll tell you why you need to do that. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here's the question. Delimiter. Why do we need this delimiter right here? The reason you need it is that because the semicolon is the default delimiter in SQL and in the stored language. And so the problem is we have to temporarily change the delimiter for MySQL because semicolons will be used in the stored procedure itself to delimit the end of a command in the stored procedure. Well, the problem is if MySQL is expecting the stored procedure itself, the entire stored procedure, to be terminated with that same delimiter, then the first time you put in a semicolon, it's going to end the stored procedure, even if that's on command 1. So the delimiter, what we're doing here is that we're telling MySQL to temporarily change the delimiter from a semicolon to a double forward slash. And now we could have picked anything we wanted for that delimiter. Some people like to use a $sign or a double $sign. It doesn't really matter, but the delimiter has to be something other than a semicolon because in the body of this stored procedure, we are going to use semicolons. So, and let's see if we have some examples. Store procedures here. So right here, you see, here's world count. We temporarily redefine that statement terminator so that the semicolon, the first semicolon in there, doesn't end the stored procedure. Does everyone see that semicolon there? So if we don't change it temporarily to the double forward slash, then this first semicolon will terminate the stored procedure prematurely, and we don't want to do that. And then down at the end, we change the delimiter back. We redefine it back. Where are we at here? Okay, so yeah, I hope that explains it, Daniel. Good questions, by the way. Um, it looks like we're using different delimiters so that we can pass semicolons to the server. That's exactly why we're doing it. In reference to block scope, page 291, if the inner block contains an item that has the same name as the same kind of item in the outer block, the outer item cannot be accessed. That's correct. It's what we call shadowed, right? The inner variable shadows the outer one. So you're correct. So in general, you want to avoid doing that. My understanding in Java, PHP, JavaScript, so forth, is that you have an item in a function, then it cannot be accessed outside of the function. However, using the while loops or if statements, you can access them from outside. They do not have block scope. That's not true. In JavaScript, that's true because of a bug in JavaScript that I don't know has been fixed or not yet. But in Java in Java for sure, you do have block scope. There's no two ways about it. I'm absolutely positive. You have block scope, and it works the same way it works in MySQL. In PHP, I think you do, but I don't program that frequently in PHP to really say. C++ definitely has block scope. They can access stuff inside the while loops and if statements, but if something's declared inside a while loop or an if statement, it can't be accessed outside. So C++ and Java have exactly the same block scope rules. There's no difference. And I believe PHP does as well. JavaScript is supposed to, but there has been a long-standing bug in JavaScript where that doesn't work correctly. So is it safe to say that it has block and you cannot access items in the while loop? As far as scope rules go, you cannot access a variable until it's declared. Okay, so if it's declared in the loop or if statement, then it cannot be accessed prior to that. And if it's declared inside the loop or if statement, it can't be accessed afterwards because the scope is that statement. However, if the variable is declared in the function or stored procedure, it can be accessed in the while loop and anywhere in that stored procedure or function. So let's look at if we can go any further on see if I can find an example of this. See if I can find an example of block scope. Okay, we talk about this block, inner block. We're not really declaring anything here. So these variables right here are accessible anywhere between the where they're declared and the end down here. Right, they're accessible. We don't see that as block scope just yet. If there's not one in here, I'll show you one. So this exit handler would only be accessible between here and there. That's an example of block scope. It's only available there. However, row count is available all the way down to there. That's its visibility. Here we've got some scope here, fetch loop. Of course, we're not declaring anything in here. Okay, let me see if I can come up with a better example, since this doesn't seem to have it. Let's go back and take... Alright, looks terrible. Create procedure... Okay, so here's a loop right here. So if I were to declare something here, int, this myvar would be available only inside the loop. I would not be able to reference it down here. Okay, I would not be able to say myvar equals 10 down here, because myvar no longer has a value. I mean, it's gone. Because it's declared inside the loop, down here, it doesn't have any scope. So that's scope there. However, exit flag or row count, which is declared up here, I can easily access down here, no problem, because it was declared at the same level. Not sure how that's doing for everyone on scope. Does that help with scope? The scope can be a tough one to get. Scope rules.